everyone, welcome back to Katie's Favorite Recipes. Today I've got 3 great simple realistic recipes that I think you all are going to love. This first one here is pizza casserole, and I am starting off cooking 2 pounds of sausage, and I'm just going to break those up into little crumbles. With my channel, my goal is to bring you recipes that are realistic, simple recipes that you do not have to spend forever cooking in the kitchen. So I also like to make recipes that make leftovers for my family of 4 so I don't have to cook every night. So I'm just going to start off with my sausage, and then while that's cooking I'm going to add 1 box of penne pasta to my boiling water. And once my sausage is finished cooking, I'm going to strain it and add 2 jars of pizza sauce. These jars were 14 ounces, so if you want to add a third one you can do that, but I'm just doing 2 14-ounce jars. You can also do spaghetti sauce, you can do marinara sauce, whatever you want. And I'm just going to pour that over my sausage and mix that up. I'm going to add just a little bit of seasoning to this, so I'm going to do 1 tablespoon of Italian seasoning, and then I'm going to mix that up. And then I'm also going to add 1/4 teaspoon of salt, just because, that's all the seasonings we're going to do, and this is going to flavor the noodles. So I'm going to mix in my Italian seasoning really well, and then I'm going to add my salt. And then once I do that and I get that all stirred up, I'm going to go over to my casserole dish and just start layering this into the casserole dish. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to layer just a little bit of my meat mixture into the bottom of the dish, just so the noodles won't be laying directly on the bottom. I am going to layer my noodles on top of that whenever I get a thin layer at the bottom. I did not grease my pan. If you want to grease yours, you can. I didn't have a problem with it sticking. But, sometimes this stuff can stick, so it's up to you really. But I'm just going to add half of my noodles to that. They have almost fully cooked, and I have strained them. They still have just the slightest little bite to them, and they're just going to finish cooking in the oven. But I'm just going to layer those, and then I'm going to pour more of my meat and sauce mixture on top of them. And then I'm actually just going to stir it up a little bit to make sure that everything gets coated. These noodles to all have equal amounts of sauce on them and flavor, so I'm just going to give it a mix. And then once I finish doing that, I am going to evenly spread it out into my casserole dish. This is just a 9x13 is what I'm using, so I'm going to mix that up and then just spread it out evenly. And then I am going to start adding my cheese on top of that once I get it flat. So I am using mozzarella cheese, and then I'm also going to go over it with some Parmesan here in a little bit. But I am doing about 1 cup of mozzarella cheese on this layer. You can do any kind of cheeses you want, but this is the kind that I'm using, and it's just about 1 cup on this layer right here. And then once I do that, I'm going to go ahead and add half of my bag of pepperoni slices, and I'm just going to layer those on that evenly. And once I finish laying those on top of my casserole, I'm going to start with my second layer. And my second layer is just going to be a repeat of what we just did. So I'm going to do the last half of my noodles that I have left over, and I'm just going to pour those directly on top of my pepperoni slices. And then after I finish spreading out my noodles, I'm going to go ahead and go in with the other half of my meat and sauce mixture, and I'm just going to pour that over top of these. We want to make sure that all of our noodles are covered with this stuff so they won't burn or dry out while it's cooking in the oven. So just go ahead and spoon that on top of everything, and we're just going to take a spatula or something and smear it around to where everything is covered. Now once you finish doing this part, you can actually go over to your pizza sauce jars and scrape those if you want. That's what I ended up doing because I seen that there was more stuck on the sides after the jars had been setting. So I did that, and then I went ahead and went in with my last layers of cheese. So I'm going to go over it with about 1 cup of mozzarella cheese, and I'm just going to spread that evenly over the top of this. And then after that, I'm going to go in with my Parmesan cheese. I did about 1 cup to 1.5 cups, and I just dumped that right over the top. And you want to make sure that everything is covered really well. So if you want to do more mozzarella than I did, you can, that's fine. Sometimes with kids and mozzarella cheese, it becomes a little stringy and it makes it hard for them to chew it up and strangles them easily, so I don't like to load my stuff with mozzarella. But after I finish doing that and spreading it all out, I'm going to go over with my last layer of pepperonis. I'm just going to evenly lay those on the top. If you want to do more pepperonis than this, you can, but I just bought a package of my favorite kind of pepperonis and just used one. And I am just layering it on there. And once that's finished, this is ready to go into the oven. So we did 350 for about 25 to 30 minutes until it's hot and bubbly and it is ready to serve. You can top it with red pepper flakes or whatever you want. Enjoy! For this next recipe, I'm doing chicken and vegetables, and I'm just going to start off mixing up my seasonings. So for the seasons that I did was 1 teaspoon of smoked paprika, 1 teaspoon of onion powder, 1 teaspoon of garlic powder, 1 teaspoon of chili powder, 1 teaspoon of rosemary, 1 teaspoon of thyme leaves, and then I'm going to do 1/4 teaspoon of salt and 1/4 teaspoon of black pepper. And I'm going to pour these all into one bowl, mix them up, and then I'm actually going to set this to the side for a little bit. But if you don't like any of these seasonings, just leave them out. You can also just do completely your own seasonings. You could do some kind of a fajita seasoning. You could do Mrs. Dash or something like that. Rotisserie chicken seasoning, whatever you want to do. And then after you get that stirred up and set to the side, I'm going to start chopping up my vegetables. I'm going to do 12-ounce bag of fresh broccoli. I'm just going to cut the big stems off of these and just cut them down into a little bit smaller pieces, just so it won't be such huge pieces. They'll cook a little faster, and it'll kind of make the dish go a little farther with them being cut down a little bit smaller. But you can do however you want to do on that. If you don't like broccoli, you can substitute any vegetable you want for it. And then once I finish cutting that up, I'm going to do 1 zucchini. The reason I only did 1 zucchini is because really not everyone in my house likes zucchinis, and this way I can still get it in the dish and be able to pick around it and not get it in everybody's plate that don't like it. So I'm just going to cut this down into little quarter pieces, and I'm just going to chop it up. And once I finish chopping up my zucchini, I'm going to go and chop up my chicken, and then we're going to start cooking everything. But if you want to get vegetables that are already chopped or vegetables that are frozen to make it simpler, feel free to do that. You can do canned vegetables. Anything that you want to put in this recipe to make it your own, go ahead and just do it. But now I'm going to move on to chopping up my chicken into about 1-inch cubes. And I like to pull off all of that white stuff that's on the chicken and cut out those really hard pieces. I feel like that makes my chicken so much more tender and easier to chew for everybody. But once I finish chopping that up, we're going to move over to the skillet. I've done about 2 tablespoons of olive oil in the skillet, and then I'm going to use half of my seasonings on that, and I'm just going to pour it over top of my chicken and stir that around so everything gets seasoned and coated really well. If you would rather toss this into a bowl with some olive oil, you can do that, but I just did it right in my skillet. And I'm just going to stir that up really well, and we're just going to cover this up and let it cook. But I guess about halfway through, I'm actually going to stir mine, so I'm not going to let it stick to the bottom and get burned. And then once I do that, I'm going to cover it back up, let it finish the cooking process. And once I know that this is fully cooked and done, I'm going to take it out of the skillet, and I'm going to add into my skillet 1 cup of chicken broth. You don't have to do this if you don't want to, but I feel like it just gives the vegetables extra flavor. So I'm going to pour that into my skillet, and then I'm going to dump my vegetables in there, and the rest of my seasoning that I have, I'm going to pour over top of that. And I'm going to mix that up to let everything get coated. Cover this up and let your vegetables cook to your desired tenderness. Some people want their vegetables to have a little bit of crunch left to it, and some don't. So however you want to do that will be great. So after you finish that, you're going to remove your vegetables from the pan and let the broth cook down until it becomes kind of glazed. And then you're going to dump everything back into that and stir it around and let that glaze coat over everything. That way it will pick up all that flavor and it won't just be wasted. And this is really all there is to it. This is a really simple recipe, and it's a great way to get in the vegetables. My family loved this. This did give us leftovers, but not a ton. I also served this with loaded baked potatoes and it was super good. For this final recipe, I'm keeping it super simple. This is a Taco Hashbrown Casserole recipe. I'm starting off with this, browning 2 pounds of hamburger. I'm going to cook it all the way through. If you wanted to do any other meat, you could do that. But I'm just going to mash this up into little pieces and I'm going to cook it all the way through. And once it's done, I'm going to strain this. And I am going to add in my taco seasoning. I'm using this kind, the Taco Bell Original Taco Seasoning packets. I'm doing 2 of those. And I am following the instructions on that package. If you want to do any other kind of seasoning, you're more than welcome to do that. But this is my favorite taco seasoning I've found so far. So I'm just going to pour that in there, add the water like it says, and just stir this up until all of the liquid cooks out and it forms a glaze and just cooks onto the hamburger meat. And that takes about 10 minutes. So once that's finished, I'm going to start mixing this up into my 9x13 casserole dish. And I did not spray mine. And I didn't really have a problem with it sticking. If you're worried, go ahead and spray it. It did stick a little bit on the sides, but not bad. And then I'm going to use my 1 bag of frozen shredded hash brown potatoes. And I let that thaw out before I used it. And then I'm doing about a cup of shredded sharp cheddar cheese. And I'm just going to mix this in my casserole dish to save on dishes. If you want to do this in a separate bowl, you can. So I'm going to go ahead and stir that up really well. And then I'm going to add my 1 can of condensed cream of mushroom soup. This is just the standard 10.5 ounce can. There would be nothing wrong with adding more cream to this if you want it to be even creamier. But I just did 1 can of this. And I'm going to stir that up really well and make sure that it's mixed into everything. And once I finish doing that, I'm just going to spread this out evenly onto my pan. For my last thing, I'm going to be topping this with sharp cheddar, the finely shredded, about a cup of that. If you want to do more, you can. I ended up seeing a few little bare spaces, so I ended up going back and adding a little bit more. If you want to do 2 cups, whatever you want. But I'm just going to sprinkle that over the top, spread it out. Once I finish with that, I'm going to put this in my preheated oven at 375 for about 25 to 30 minutes until it's brown and bubbly. And I think you guys are going to love this. I topped it with cilantro and served it with green beans. I hope you all enjoy. Like and subscribe for more. Thanks. Bye.